Hey, welcome everyone to another episode of Microsoft Spotlight Podcast. This has been our first episode of 2024, which we've recorded, and we've had a little bit of a break. We've refreshed, we've re-energized, and possibly a little bit of a new direction to the podcast. Today I'm joined by my usual host, Andrew Moran. How you doing, Andrew? You good?
I am good. I'm good. So we've had a bit of a change of direction because we want to obviously make sure this podcast is delivering the very best and giving a well-rounded view of not just from mine and John's perspective and the guests that come on, all the women in tech, but also it's nice to get some male allies to come in and actually speak about what they're currently doing, because we know some great male allies who are joined by one today, who actually spoke with us at the South Coast Summit. I think it was 2 years ago in our panel now. So we know a little bit about his background and how he got into IT. So I thought it would be nice to share that wider through this podcast. Obviously, just have more engaging conversations.
Yeah, 100%. So I think this man needs no intro. It's Peter Rising, author, YouTuber, all round great guy. I don't think there's anyone that's ever had a bad word to say about you, Peter. So welcome to the podcast. This is your second time. Is it the second time you've been on the podcast? I think
I recorded
a
segment when you had male allies record a small sort of testimonials as to why they were allies to women in tech. But this is my first time as an actual guest, so it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, John and Andrew. It's nice to just catch up with you both, as we said just before we started recording, because it's been a while. So great to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me.
No worries. I don't think we could have had a better first guest for this new series, eh?
You're
so
very kind.
Let's dig straight into it, Pete. Like what we do normally, give a bit of an intro on kind of what you're doing at the moment in terms of work, and just a little bit of background on yourself, if that's all right.
Sure, yeah. Well, so Peter Rising, Microsoft MVP, and as you've already said, YouTuber, author, all those sort of things. But day to day, I am currently working for a wonderful organization called Insight, which is a global solutions integrator. I have the privilege of being the consulting services manager for a security and compliance team of consultants and architects. And I joined last year, and when I joined, there was 3 of us in the team. We're now 15 strong across EMEA, which is awesome to see the team grow. And it'll probably not surprise you to learn that I've made every effort to make sure that we have a very diverse team across our EMEA locations. That includes 4 of those individuals are female, and 2 of which are very, very young next generational talents. And I'm all about that, as you guys know, and the reasons for that go back to the very start of my own career in IT in the mid-90s. So that's where I'm at the moment. I'm doing that. I'm doing my YouTube channel, which I've been doing for about a year, about the same amount of time that I've been at Insight, actually, because I wanted to just help people and get some tech demos out there, exam guide content. I'm focusing very heavily on that in my, if you can call it, spare time at the moment. Taking a break from
There's no such thing as spare time.
Yeah. Taking a break from the writing right now. I'm a bit burned out with the writing. I don't want to write another book for a while. I'm not even sure if I want to write another tech book, to be honest. If I author anything going forward, I think I'd like to do something different. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now, and I'm thoroughly enjoying life. It's got its ups and downs for sure, challenges, but overall, it's all positive. It's all good.
Awesome. I've got some questions to get out, like teed up from that intro, but kind of like let's dive into how you started into IT, because I think it's a fascinating story. I think you shared it on LinkedIn recently, and I think that's how I kind of spoke to you before the podcast and that. But can you give us a bit of a background? You're an office staff, like office admin type person. And,
yes,
yeah,
exactly that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, good memory.
So it was around about mid-90s, sort of 94. I'd been working in a law firm in Newcastle upon Tyne, which is my home city, or closest to these days. I'm a bit further down the road, and I'd been there a long time already. I actually started with that as my first job in 1988, showing how old I am here. I'm 52 this year, but and I'd been.
I was born in 87, by the way.
Wowza.
Then next year it's my 40th, so yeah, we'll get in there.
Wow, now I feel old, but yeah, started work in 1988. Would you believe? A long time, and I've still got 15 odd years to go before I can retire. But hey, I'm loving it. But and I started as the office junior. I came out of school with really no qualifications. I was never very academic. Never. I was a daydreamer. Teachers were always like, your head's somewhere else, you're on a planet, and I didn't get very good grades. And I just wanted to get out into the working world, thinking it would be easy. But I got this job as an office junior, which basically meant I did all the photocopying. I would deliver letters around the city. I would take the post to the post office at the end of the day, collect it in the morning and open it, and do the really awful jobs that nobody else wanted to do, like shredding. And we were on a street where there was a bar next door, so you can imagine the sort of stuff that greeted me on the front step of the premises on the morning. So it was my job to clean up that sort of mess as well. So all the jobs nobody wanted to do. I then progressed to the lofty heights of filing clerk a few years afterwards, which was a little bit of a step up. So it's put all the files away and archive them, and physical files, I mean, and box them up and take them on my little trolley to the storage facility that we had, which is a short walk through the city, and then go and get them back when lawyers wanted them for reference. So it's a bit different from the world we're in today, isn't it, where everything is accessible on Office 365. But around this time, obviously, the legal secretaries who worked for that organization, they all worked on these brother typewriters, clicky clacky typewriters, and slowly but surely they got word processors in, and then eventually they started moving towards Windows PCs, and it was Windows 3.1, Windows 95 around that time was just starting to come into play. And they hired an IT manager, and her name was and is Deborah Hayward. And I haven't spoken with Deborah for a good few years. We occasionally have caught up on LinkedIn over the years, but when she came in, and as you can imagine, technology was starting to really take off, and her role got very busy very quickly. She was on her own in a growing law firm, one of the largest in the Northeast. And my desk as filing clerk just happened to be next to her office, and she was getting really stressed. And she said to me, "Peter, do you fancy learning this? Do you fancy sort of, I could do with some help, and I'll give you your first job as my IT support assistant," I think I was called. And I was, yeah, I'd been 5 years really not any direction, and this was amazing. I thought, I can really get into this, and I took to it like a duck to water. I just started realizing I could do this. I could build PCs, I could fix printers, I could do all that sort of stuff, and that was my way in. And I never forgot that, because Deborah took a chance on me and gave me my start in this career. I didn't have a career until that point. I had a job, and this was a starting point for me that I could latch onto and take and run with, and I really loved it and got a passion for it. So I never forgot that, and from that moment on, I made a commitment that I could see how challenging that was in the mid-90s for a woman to be in the tech industry. Although, knowing Deborah, if you knew her, you wouldn't know it was a challenge, because she was very, very confident and didn't shy away from challenges with a very, even at that time, male-dominated environment. She could hold her own for sure. She didn't let anyone push her around. But when you think about the challenges of being a woman in the tech industry today, even, and some of the discrimination and inequalities that we are faced with, even in a quarter of the way through the 21st century, Deborah being in that role in the mid-90s and being so successful and accepted is absolutely incredible and a real inspiration. So I knew I had to be a voice for women in the tech industry going forward. So that's how it all began. That's why I'm so passionate about being an ally to our wonderful women in tech. And I've been privileged along the way to know many. Not enough. There's still not enough. And but in those early days, you would come across very few. But when you did, it was always a really pleasant surprised to say, "Oh, this is great! That you're a woman in the tech industry." But it was challenging for them to be taken seriously, to be accepted. Quite a lot of the prejudices of those male attitudes, and you still get it today. But examples of which might be the technical expert is a female. They're in a room with a male colleague who is not a technical expert. There's a question asked, which is more appropriately answered by the female technical expert, and that's just disregarded by whoever's asked the question, and they go to the male, sort of, might be a sales colleague, for example, and they're not going to know this, and they quite rightly will defer back. Well, no, that's this individual should answer that, not me. So
yeah, I think we've probably all probably witnessed that in our careers, and also we've heard it quite a lot on this podcast as well. So a lot of our guests that have said that in the past, but kind of I can't remember who it was.
In our positions in the working life, when we do attend physical meetings, when they are done, you'll generally see that there's a lot of male technical people in the room, and then probably a female project manager. Yeah. There's never a male project, coordinator, and then loads of technical females in the room. That doesn't happen. So even like from a project manager perspective, you also need to make sure their voice is heard. Yes, they're not a true woman in tech, and they're not a technical person, but they do know enough about what they're there for to understand, to be able to help deliver that piece of work. And it's, I can say, because I've never been in a room where it's purely women that are technical people, and when I have been in a room where there are strong technical women, I mean, the one example I use all the time is Tina Shepherd. She's massively well known within the UC space. Been doing Microsoft Teams, Link, LCS since my God was a boy. Probably won't be saying that, but Tina's amazing. She's one person when you're in a room with her and you'll help doing that conversation with the customer. She very much is a leader, and she's well respected.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that perspective. And when you sort of break these biases and attitudes down to the component element, when you think about human beings, what we are at the end of the day, we're all just thoughts and consciousness. We're all the same underneath. We just happen to be in different vehicles, and the definitions of those genders are a lot more diverse today than they used to be in the times that I was growing up, for sure. But we're all just consciousness and thought. So I've never quite understood this distinction, why there is these prejudices and why certain roles are more perceived to be male or female. I mean, you do get it in reverse as well. To this day, you will usually find that HR departments and marketing departments are predominantly female. There are exceptions to that, but in general, you do still find those male and female stereotypes. But I'm really keen to just make sure that in and amongst that, whilst that's still there, that perception, that status quo, if you like, that we enable those young females who are passionate about getting into a tech role, that they know there's a path for them, that they know that they can be supported, and it's equally for them as it is for any young guy coming out of school or college or university. So that's what I'm passionate about.
So, question I had from your intro is you've expanded your team exponentially over the past year. What's that? Times by what, 5? Grew the team by multiple of 5, and that's impressive. But what's more impressive is the amount of females you've added within the team. And in my previous role, I think I was part of the hiring team for about 10 to 15 consultants over a 5-6 years period. And in terms of like the actual interview process, we were just seeing probably interview two female, two women over that period of time. How did you actually kind of like first get the applications through the door to get to interview, and then how did you kind of whittle it down to get such good people to be within your team?
Yeah, I mean, of the 4 female individuals in my team right now, they're all very different stories, and I'm very, very fortunate that they all came to end up at my door. So one of those is an individual who is of a similar age to myself, and she had the wish to retrain completely. She had another career path, but wanted to get into security consultancy in the tech world. And she was already in our organization at Insight, and approached me to, or my superior more accurately, to be truthful, to ask if there was an opportunity to talk with me and see if there was a pathway. And I was all for that, because I love that that courage, if nothing else, and that strength of character and that determination to think, I want to make a complete change. I want to go for something totally different. So we had that conversation, and what I go by as much as anything else on an interview is when I meet somebody for the first time and it's usually in this format these days, it's very rare it's face to face, but even on a virtual call, I've usually made my mind up within about 2 minutes of talking to the individual in terms of, I can work with this person. This is somebody who I think has got it, whatever it may be. Equally, I can know immediately if the other way is true. I'm very fortunate that I have that ability to size people up very quickly. And I knew in this case that I could work with this individual, and it's proving to be the case. She's been an absolutely wonderful asset. She brings experience in other sectors which are transferable and relevant to the role that she's now learning and training for. The other 3 individuals are much younger, what we would call next generation talent, which we are all about supporting across all genders at Insight anyway. And we're very fortunate in that we have something called the Skills Academy at Insight, where people can come in. It's like an internship. It's like a 6-month program, and they go through all aspects of the organization, and they look at sales and solutions and technical, and then they can apply for roles. And when I started at Insight, within a week, one of these young individuals had approached me, because part of their learning path in the Skills Academy is to network with useful people that they think can help and support them and they can learn from and have as mentors. And she reached out to me. And immediately, again, I was like, yes, this is somebody who I think could learn. And it's about the person. The skills are teachable. And if the person is right, and you think they're going to be a good fit in that respect, then everything else can be taught. They can learn from the other more established consultants and architects around them who have that experience and who can share that with them. And we actually, from that, the genesis of something we have now, we started then. It's what is known as our associate consultant program, which is effectively a junior consultant role that we've devised especially for younger talent like that, who can come out of our Skills Academy or maybe transfer from other roles, because one of the other individuals is a young individual. She was working as maternity cover for 1 year in our marketing team, and she reached out saying that she wanted to get into this area, wanted that career change. And marketing is a great experience for us to have in terms of new offerings and offering development and how things look on one pages and collateral. So and again, I knew that she was going to be a quick learner. She had the passion, the drive to succeed. The only one that came from an agency was the final individual, and she, as you can expect, there's still that when you go to an agency seeking a certain role. It was a technical consultant role. I had about, I don't know, 15 or so male candidates, and then this one female CV came through, and immediately her CV stood out to me. And it's not because she was female, it was just the way it was worded. Because I sometimes I'm conscious. I do wonder if I'm maybe biased the other way sometimes, that I seek out female candidates at the expense of maybe more qualified and more suitable male candidates. I don't consciously do that, but this CV stood out to me. And when I came to interview her, again, I immediately knew, yes, this is somebody who's going to be an awesome fit, and it's proven to be the case. So 4 very different stories, and I'm very, very happy and privileged that they all decided to put their trust in me and join the team.
Yeah,
that's a question then about the CV then. So what really made it stand out from the rest? I mean, the organisation that I work for, they've done a lot of work recently around the wording in job descriptions to try and make it as inclusive as possible, because as an architect in my team in Digital Workplace, we have 0 females working for us. It's something that we want to try and address. We're trying to address it internally, but I don't think there's the right people within the business to move over into our roles. So I like what you've done with obviously the Skills Academy and that kind of like transition period. I think that's quite a good step to go down. But what really stood out in that CV to make her so attractive that the others put behind?
In any CV, I look for the little details as much as the experience that's in there, and it's how it's presented, how it's laid out, how readable it is from start to finish. Sometimes I look at CVs and I get bored when I'm on halfway down page 1. So if it grabs your attention first with a good introduction about this is who I am, this is a good summary is important. Equally, I look for the tiny little details like the spelling and the grammar, that sort of thing. And this is an individual who is not originally from the UK. She's from mainland Europe, so English is not her first language. So, and it was a wonderful CV, beautifully presented, easy to read through, interesting stories. It wasn't a bunch of dry statistics laid out with these are my qualifications, this is where I worked. There was a bit of a story in there, a bit of a narrative, and I look for those extra little details when looking. To be truthful, overall, our mutual good friend Will Rowe may or may not agree with me on this. I think CVs are dead. I don't think they're necessary anymore. Most recruitment consultants that I talk to disagree with that. I think you don't really get much of an impression of the person from those couple of sheets of paper or on a PDF now. This was an exception. That's one of the other reasons why I thought it's like her personality was on the paper, on the page. But in general, I think I just want to maybe take a look at a LinkedIn profile, because then you can, and some people do put the photos on a CV now. I think that helps. I think that helps if you get an image of the person as well, because then you can put a name to the face or a face to the name, and little details make all the difference, I find.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I know for my own CV, I always try and include all my social media links. So yes, they can go out and find out who I am. There's obviously links there to my transcript as well, so they can see all the exams that I've done, whether they're up to date or whatnot. So I think, like you say, them small little details do help, because yes, it's great reading all your technical experience. It's going to be similar to other people if you're applying for the same kind of role. But you need to be able to just show yourself in a way that obviously stands out, and obviously, yes, putting a picture on there, putting any kind of like logos that you might, like associations you might be a part of, whether that's from a volunteering perspective or you're running a particular club or something like that. I think they also help show you what kind of person you are, because yes, we're here to get paid. That's what we do, but you need to show that you do stuff outside of work as well, and have something about you.
Oh, definitely. And that's what our wider community is all about. And something that I've tried to inspire internally at Insight. I mean, Insight's a big global organization. And I've tried to get interest in people all across Insight. I mean, mainly in the UK and EMEA, because that's where we're closest to, but get people interested in getting engaged in the community, and maybe even ultimately involved in getting nominated for MVP. And there are some who have we've got our little internal community of practice that we started for that, where people can come and talk to me and find out what it's all about. And we've got 2 or 3 individuals, some male, some female, that have really grasped that by the throat, and they've gone for it and started a TikTok or a LinkedIn video series or that sort of thing. And it's wonderful to see people getting it and wanting to get that wider involvement, and realize that you can build a brand for yourself, which can ultimately benefit your career as well. So it's a two-way street, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So the one thing that obviously, I know about you and that I like a lot is obviously you started a podcast called Cloud Conversations, and obviously that was with Rue, and Rue's obviously a great guy as well. But obviously over time you also transitioned in Cat, and is it? And also she's got a Microsoft first name, Azure McFarland as well.
Azure, yeah.
So I like the fact that obviously you included, Cloud Conversation to be not just more about two guys middle aged sitting there, talking about tech. It's also including women as well, because it's also nice to have their perspective on technology as well and how it's going.
Oh, very much so. And when Rue and I started it out, just the two of us, it was actually called the Cloud Conversations with Rue and Pete. I don't typically go by Pete. I sort of describe myself as Peter, but everyone pretty much calls me Pete. You can call me what you like. I don't really care. But I digress. But when it was being well received and started to get a bit of traction, and it was becoming difficult for us to record regularly and get us together, I thought, well, let's add another host. And Rue completely agreed with me. I said that I think the next host should definitely be a female host, just so we get some diversity, and hopefully, there's always a selfish motive as well, in part of that, of trying to attract a more diverse audience as well. That's built into it, but that never seems to happen, unfortunately. That's one thing that is quite frustrating, that when I look at my YouTube channel now, the engagement on that is about 80% male, if not more. But getting back to Cloud Conversations, I had known Kat for a short time at that point. I'd reached out to her because I was impressed with what she was sharing on LinkedIn, and I thought, this is somebody who is so right for the MVP program, and I wanted to guide her and ultimately nominate her for that. And I said to her, do you know what? We really want another host on the podcast. She'd already been a guest at that time. I think everyone had who ended up being a host. And we really like the host to be you. And she was so blown away. She couldn't believe that we'd chosen her and invited her to do it. But she was awesome, is awesome. And over time, we just grew it, and it became even more difficult to organize guests, especially internationally, the time differences. So we realized we could do with maybe as a host on the other side of the pond. So Azure had been on the show previously as a guest. So we reached out to her and said, would you consider joining the team? She again was really happy to do so. And she brought another dynamic of not only being a woman in tech, but a woman of color in tech, which is something more entirely. So there are additional discriminations and challenges that Azure will speak to. I don't want to speak for her, but I know that is a hugely important subject for her in her life. And then finally, Femke, the wonderful Femke, who I know you've had Femke on as well. She's absolutely awesome, and
she's a good friend of mine.
She's wonderful, and her tenacity and her drive and what she's done since I first met her, when she wasn't even an MVP yet, the initiatives that she started, and she's got into cybersecurity herself a little bit. I've seen recently. I owe her a call, actually. I owe all of these people a call, because we've not talked a lot recently, because I think we've all four of us or five of us have gone on to have very, very good career choices. We've all landed in roles that are very demanding and take up a lot of our time. And as a result, Cloud Conversations, we've never officially disbanded it. It's still there, and we've never said we'll not do it again, but it just got increasingly hard for us to get everyone together and organize guests. So we might go back to it, and I really hope that we could. So, and I started my own YouTube channel because I wanted to be more consistent and do a bit more on the demo side of things. But and it's easier to do things on your own when you're on your own initiative, when it's just your project. But we've never said we won't go back to it. But I was very proud that we had in the end, we had more female hosts than male, which I was very proud of.
Yeah. So obviously with this podcast, when we came very first aware of Sophie, was like, saw stuff on LinkedIn. I was like, she's doing a lot of videos, a lot of talking, very confident. Yeah. And then when we got on an episode, it was like, well, we do need that additional host, and obviously we'd like it to be a woman, since we are a woman in tech podcast. would be great if she could be on, and because obviously she's a younger generation to me and John as well. She has obviously a different view on a lot of things as well. So it's nice to have that included into the episodes, because there's a lot of questions that Sophie asked that me and John just wouldn't think about, or have that experience to go and ask that question, where Sophie's like driven, like, I want to know this, I want to know that. Sometimes, as I say, me and John said it many times, we can literally sit on an episode with Sophie and just sit in the background, just let her do all the hard work.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying, and don't you find that you learn so much from Sophie's sort of generation, this next generation of talent coming through? I'm super excited for, because the drive and the tenacity and the vision that they have is something really special, I found. And I find that when they approach me, as I'm very privileged to be approached a lot by individuals in that generation getting into tech roles or wanting to, they approach me to mentor them and guide them, and it's a massive privilege, which I take very seriously. But equally in that relationship, I find, and I tell them this, I learn just as much from them as they do from me, hopefully. And it's a two-way street. You're never too old to be a mentee yourself, and it's a mutually beneficial experience. So I think this next crop of talent of this younger generation coming through is very exciting.
100%.
Yes, it's something I've been trying to have internally. It's like, as well as being a mentor to the mentee, it's also having that reverse as well. So if you're basically learning about them and where they've come from and what they're doing, it then obviously improves you as a person, because yes, you can give them all your experience, and we're both, all three of us have been the IT market a long time, so it's nice obviously to share that experience, but it's also nice to learn about what they think as well and what they perceive what's going to go with the market, because we have seen a lot of change from Microsoft in the years that we've been doing this role. So it's nice to have their perspective. Well, what do you see? Because especially with the likes of AI coming in, which is obviously the new thing, and Copilot and all that kind of stuff, we'll get to a point where they're taking that on board, they're having to drive that more. But what's the next thing after that? So they need to be thinking 3-4 steps ahead of us, where we're going to think about 1 or 2 until we we come to that retirement age.
Oh, completely. And I mean, the pace of change has been phenomenal. I mean, and they've had a totally different experience growing up with tech in their lives. I mean, as I said, I'll be 52 this year. And when I was at school, we didn't have computers. I think I remember I had a BBC computer that was one of them in the school when I was about 11, maybe. That was the first time I'd seen one, and had a tape deck in it. And I didn't do computer studies at school when I did the I was the first ever year of GCSEs, actually, in 1987. I didn't do very well, but we didn't do computers. So now you've got a computer in your pocket. Everyone's got one. So in some ways, you look back, you see all these memes on Instagram saying like life was better in the 80s, and we were playing out in the streets and grazing our knees and jumping over things on bikes, and I did all that, and I look back on it fondly. But every generation changes. I mean, my oldest son George, now he's becoming a young man. He's 17 this year, and he's off to college now, and he probably looks at me as the old untrendy dad. In fact, when I took him to get his eyes tested about a year ago, I'm sure he walked about 2 paces behind me, because he didn't want to see me with this mop of hair that I've got. But yeah, they've got this totally different perspective on life. And I look back on, say, somebody's born in 1972. I can't envisage what life was like in the 50s and the 40s and 60s when my parents were growing up. It just seems alien. And to George, he probably can't envision, well, the 20th century, for example. It's like it changes so rapidly, and ever more rapidly as we get more advanced in tech and the world becomes smaller.
Yeah. As we've obviously touched on a lot of, we all know that you're a great Matt ally. I'd like to touch about a bit of your personal life as well, because I know that obviously in your own life you've had challenges that you have to basically deal with on a day-to-day basis, and you've spoken many times about mental health and burnout. So I suppose I'd like you just to have a bit of chat about that as well.
Of course, yeah. So the last 10 years or so have been extremely interesting. I've already mentioned my oldest son, but I have a second son as well. His name's Oliver. He's 14 years old now. And when he was 2 years old, he was diagnosed with very severe autism. Well, he wasn't actually diagnosed with severe autism, but we learned later that he was on the on the sort of lower functioning end of the spectrum, if you like, autism spectrum disorder, which is a broad spectrum. No two people with autism are the same and can lead very, very different lives, have very different challenges. So that was a journey that we went on very early in his life when we realized that he was not developing in the same way that George had, and he wasn't speaking, he wasn't verbal, and we ended up getting that diagnosis. So that was a life-changing moment. And it came on the same week that my mother passed away after a long illness. So hell of a week, to say the least. And a few weeks after that, a few short weeks after that, we moved house, which is not something I ever want to do again. I don't care if there's anything wrong with this house. We'll make it work. I'll build an outdoor office like this, and we'll adapt it. Because
I don't think there's anything more stressful than moving house. I think moving house is the most stressful thing ever.
Completely. And that was the catalyst. That was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back for me, and it led to what I learned was my first ever panic attack a few days before we moved. And I didn't think I was having a panic attack. How it manifested in me, and still does to this day when I get them, which touch wood is not so often. It feels very physical. It feels like something's physically wrong with me. And my head, I can't even describe it to this day how it felt. My head felt weird. I felt like I might be having some sort of brain incident or a stroke or something like that, but it turned out it was a panic attack. It took me several months to accept that. I rebelled against the doctors, and there must be something wrong and physically, and they sent me for all sorts of scans and tests and x-rays, and eventually I had to accept it. So over the years I've got used to my anxieties and ultimately my moods as well, because I do suffer with depression quite a lot, and that's challenging because my mood can be up, it can be down. There's no happy medium with me, and it can happen very suddenly. So it's a challenge. It's a big challenge for sure, and it was a learning journey. I went on the medication. I didn't quite gel with the first one we tried. We went on another one, and I settled on that, and it started to work, and I started getting sort of back to normal. But after that first panic attack, it's like something changed in me that never quite went back to the way I was beforehand. I've never quite felt the same as I did before since then. Something in my consciousness, my everyday experience sort of went out of alignment. It's hard to describe really, and it never quite went back to the way it was. So I feel like a completely different person. But I've adapted to that, and over the years, with Oliver's diagnosis and his challenges, we've had to adjust our lives, because autism and the nature of Oliver's autism is something that limits our ability to go out as a family. He's not somebody who, particularly, especially since COVID, he doesn't enjoy leaving home very much. He used to go to school, a special needs school, a special educational needs school, a SEND school, as we call it in the UK here. And then COVID happened, and then everyone stopped going places. And I think in his brain, he thought, well, that's it. I don't go to school anymore. And when things started opening up again, he initially went back. But then back in the early days of the world opening up again, you'll recall that if somebody in a bubble or a group or a class, for example, if a teacher or people got a positive diagnosis, then that whole class had to be off again and isolate for 14 days. So the one thing people with autism tend to like is routine and familiarity, and it was just too inconsistent, and we ended up in a position where Oliver no longer would go to school. And that sounds a bit silly to people potentially on the outside of that. We do worry sometimes that people might judge us a little bit and say, well, why don't they just make him? They're the parents, they're in charge, just make them go. But we feel validated in the fact that we've worked with a multidisciplinary team of social workers and services like LD CAMs and pediatricians and clinical nursing staff and that sort of thing. And they all come into our house with very, very bold and confident and positive ideas, like, we'll sort this out for you, we'll get him back to school. And then they meet Oliver and they realize that If he doesn't want to do something, there's no way that you're going to make him do it. And if you push him too hard, and we as his parents obviously know him best, we know how far we can push and how far we can't. And if we push too hard, he actually can turn violent and be quite a danger to himself and others. He's a lovely little boy. If you see a picture of him or meet him, everyone falls for him, because even at 14, he doesn't look like a 14-year-old. He's got this babyish face, and he is and I know I'm biased here, but everyone says it themselves, he is the cutest, loveliest looking little lad you've ever seen. He's just gorgeous. Everyone falls for him. And I always say to people coming in, don't be fooled by the cuteness. He'll wrap you around his little finger. But thankfully, we're starting to make some progress with them recently, though. I mean, it's taken 4 years almost since COVID now, isn't it? And he's only now building up some trust with wonderful group of teachers and teaching assistants who started actually coming to our home every day to engage with him. And slowly but surely, they've won his trust. They've started taking him out a bit. They took him to Lidl to do a bit of shopping. Then they took him to Lidl, then the school, to drop off what they'd bought at the school while he waited in the car. And they've eased things gradually. And eventually he stepped into the building. And now he started going into school for 1 hour a day. And now he's going in for half a day. And the teachers come and pick him up. So the teachers have been absolutely wonderful. So we're seeing some wonderful progress with him. But
Nice.
It's been a hell of a journey, for sure. And it's had our lives all over the place, and trying to maintain a very challenging and responsible career.
At least you can say it's interesting, Peter.
Yeah, it's not dull, that's for sure. It's not dull. I mean, I'm very privileged that I'm in the role that I'm in. But I often say to my wife and others in the family that I never intended to get to this level in my career, really. It was kind of a happy accident. I never intended to have this much responsibility. I always envisioned getting to a certain level and stopping. But because my wife had to stop working, just become a full-time carer, and the benefits of that are not that much. Every little helps, obviously. She had to give up her own career. Financially, it was a challenge for a long time, and I had to elevate myself through sheer will to a level that I never envisaged getting to. I'm so happy that I did, because I love it, but there's very little free time in the world for me now. To quote, if you're Peaky Blinders fans, Tommy Shelby once famously said, I've learned there's no rest for me in this world, perhaps in the next. I probably butchered the accent, but I always like to try and do it.
Well, that's it. I mean, I was actually born in, but actually like a mile from Birmingham city centre. I don't really have a Brummie accent, because I was born. I've lived on the outskirts of Birmingham, like Birmingham stroke the Black Country. So my accent's very much varied. There's times it like comes out, but yeah, I am a Brummie through and through.
Geordie, actually.
Stick to that.
Yeah. My Geordie accent comes out sometimes when I've had a few to drink, or I get talking about football, but I think I'm less broad than I used to be.
No, I mean, I thought it'd be good, obviously, to share that story, because I know, obviously, the hard work that you do at home, obviously supporting your family, because obviously I know your son had autism, and also the fact that you do a lot of in a challenging role, you do a lot of managerial work and do the community stuff as well. So balancing all them three pillars obviously can be quite challenging, and I know that for myself, because I would like to do more community work than I do now, but it's then I'm balancing home life, I'm balancing my own mental health, as well as I run a football team. So it's like I just can't commit to what I was committing to before. I'd like to do more of it, but it's just the time's not there.
Yeah, it's hard finding time. Time is the one commodity that we have to maximize our minutes, and that can be very challenging. And certain things have to come first: family, obviously, and work to pay the bills. But through sheer force of will, people ask me how I do it sometimes, and I honestly don't know myself. I just kind of make it work. I just seize little moments throughout the day. I mean, most of my YouTube videos, I usually tend to do those in little chunks here and there. I'll maybe record an intro and an outro for 5 minutes over a lunch period, or if I get 5 minutes in between meetings, and it all just gels together. And I was
going to ask you that was what's your advice on building out that type of video content? Because I mean, I started probably roughly the same time as you, but you've just been a hell of a lot more consistent. I've been very inconsistent. And it's just because of just finding time to just go through and do the editing and all that stuff. I found it very hard.
It's just sheer bloody minded persistence on my part. And I think that maybe comes out of my own, as I've learned from Oliver, it's explained an awful lot about me as a person, because it's definitely from my side of the family that the autism comes. It's indisputable, because my brother also has 2 children who have been diagnosed with autism. So it's definitely in our genes rather than my wife's side. And Oliver's behavior has explained an awful lot about me, challenges that I had growing up at school and not fitting in and being teased and picked on and that sort of thing. And I was like, and I always think I'm Oliver, but Oliver is like me, magnified by 1,000. He's got it way harder. I always tell a little bit of a joke here, in that the level of autism that I have means that I can just about masquerade as a normal human being, and nobody really notices. I just about get away with it. But yeah. And I have gone down the path of getting diagnosed, and I got as far as being assessed, and I had a letter saying that I have got all of the traits of autism, but if you want to get that fully rubber stamped, you've got to go through a 5-year process. And I thought, I don't need to do that. But getting back to your point, it's part of that in my DNA drives me to, if I commit to something, I'm fully in. There's no middle ground with me. It's all or nothing. And when I decided to do this, I was like, right, I want to do this, and I want to get it to a certain level where I can grow a community. I can make a bit of a side hustle out of it as well. I'm not going to lie. I have that goal also, to earn some money, which is a little side hustle, which I'm starting now to do, thanks to the YouTube Partner Program. But you do have to be persistent and consistent and really, really go for it. You have to do the little details, like you have to get your hashtags right and put all the settings in, like the captions, and just even I'm changing things all the time now. I mean, I'm using Copilot to suggest better titles and descriptions for me now to make them more appealing, and that seems to have worked a great deal. So and I do enjoy it. I enjoy the interaction with those who my small sort of but growing community of members that I now have, and I do additional perks for them, like members only videos. And I got 3 levels of membership. You start with getting badges on the standard level. The middle level, you get members only videos and member shout outs and whatnot. And then the top level, it's you get all of that, but you get a 1-to-1 with me each month to be guidance, coaching, whatever you want it to be. And I have 3 who've joined at that level, which still bowls me over that people would do that. But I get so much out of it. I really do. It's so rewarding. A lot of hard work, but ultimately rewarding.
Yeah, I think there's so much like skills and stuff that you can just grow by doing at YouTube. Like my son, 7 years old, he wants to be a YouTuber like most kids do. So I think he's his birthday last year, we got him a desk. I gave him my old PC, bought him a little like a TV monitor type, TV monitor. Christmas, we got him a decent microphone. He was using my one, like ferrying my microphone up to him. I got him a HyperX, a decent enough microphone. And he's just every week now, Sunday, record a video. I edit it, do a thumbnail, go on to ChatGPT, ask ChatGPT to like give him like the prompt of what he's done, ask it for a description on YouTube, a title for YouTube, and ask it for all the hashtags that could be associated with it. So I'm learning a lot just on that side, and for him as well. Like, so a lot of people, isn't he too young to do that? I'm like, well, no, he's learning how to actually present. Like, he's learning how to talk in front of an audience. I know it's an audience that's not there, but in his head, the audience is there, and he's talking to an audience. He's getting aware of all of the little bits that go into it, and creating content, coming up with ideas, and all that type of stuff. So I think it's for me, it was like something to really get him to do at a young age, where he's actually developing a lot of skills that a lot of people probably don't see for when he's a lot older. But yeah, that was my idea for it, and it's going well. He's got 14 subscribers, so he's well happy. Which was more than Mr. Beast did at his age, in his first year. So like he uses like people like Mr. Beast, some Unspeakable, and like all of these YouTubers as like inspiration. So it's it's good. Like for me, like if he goes into IT or teaching or absolutely anything. It's great skills to learn.
Yeah, I hadn't. This may I hadn't heard of Mr. Beast until a few weeks ago, and my obviously George is well into anything trendy on YouTube, and my wife actually she's very clued up on anything that's on trend also, and they were talking about Mr. Beast, and I said, who? And like I just got the typical eye roll from them, so I now know who that is. But,
Probably the most famous man alive. Probably the most famous man alive now. Like.
It's mad, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
mad, and I had no clue who he was in my own little world. But yeah, it's never too early to start them. I mean, I think George would love to be a YouTuber as well, but I think his passion for sports is overriding that at the moment. He's very into physical sporting activity and playing football and that sort of thing. But
Aaron's got his debut for Faversham Town tomorrow morning. Like he's going to be playing his first match, playing in goal for him tomorrow. So that'll be interesting. It's just, you know, when you get kids of this age, I think on Tuesday he does football, Wednesday he does jiu-jitsu, Thursday he does swimming, Saturday morning he does football again, and then Sunday he does YouTube. So it's
So like me, your dad's taxi. Then you're ferrying him all over the place, I'm guessing.
Oh, the problem is,
it's not for me. Monday, I run the football team for my dad, so I got training on Monday. I take him to training on Wednesday nights. He goes to Carl Henry, who used to play for Wolves. So he basically does like shot stopping for him. And then on Friday, he's got goalkeeping training again. So he's a goalkeeper, so he has dedicated training again on Friday. And Sundays, we have matches. But John, you always talk about your trophies. Oh, I've got my own little trophy now. Here we go. From winning the league.
Awesome.
Well done.
Walsall Junior.
So my team actually won their first trophy just before Christmas. So I had to do like a little bit of a celebration and get him like to spraying water everywhere, giving them medals.
By the way, have we done an episode since South Coast Summit?
Yes, we have. Yeah,
we have. Oh, so I would have
both,
mentioned that we're now 3-time champions of the pub quiz.
Huh?
I don't know if I would have mentioned it. I think the medal's over there somewhere.
No, to be fair, I don't think you've actually mentioned it on any episode since then. But
yeah, 3 times.
You got it in there. Got it in there.
Not once, not twice.
Were you on Zoe's team then?
Yeah, we're part of Zoe's team. Yeah.
Yeah, because Zoe's team always wins.
We do. We do always win. That is true, Peter. We had not competitive. This year was quite funny. We had a really good team in second place, and they were beating us quite all the way through, to be fair. But the last 2 rounds we pulled out the bag, and one of them was about Copilot. One of the round was just fully on Copilot, and you had me. I've just been doing non-stop Copilot for the past 6 months. You had Zoe and Kevin. Obviously, Copilot podcast between the two of them and head up the Copilot bit in Avanard. It was just like we had Jose, who does a lot of stuff on security Copilot and that. It was just like we're gonna nail this, and we now got every single question right, and it just put us up to the top.
Yeah, I missed South Coast Summit last year. I was at the one before, obviously, where I was with you guys on the panel, but I was going to be at the 2023 one, but I got COVID and for the first time.
The week before, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was. So I was gutted to miss out because I love South Coast Summit. It's so well put together by Aaron and Nathan. They do a phenomenal job. So I was gutted when I couldn't attend.
Anyway, no South Coast Summit this year. We're up to Scotland for the Scottish Summit.
Yeah, when's that? It'll be coming up fairly soon, I guess.
October. I think it's October.
Oh, it's October, right? Okay, I'll have to make an effort to get to that because I've actually never been in person to the Scottish Summit. I've attended when it was virtual only in COVID times, and I did a bit of moderating for them, but I've never actually been. So I might target that one as Are they sort of alternating year on year with South Coast now? Is that what I heard they were doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I like that, and then it can.
I don't because it's less conferences. So
I suppose I get where you're coming from. I get where you're coming from, but it's hard for me to get places in person. So I'm not as bothered by the lack of in-person conferences, but I appreciate that perspective. But there you go.
Unfortunately, it's the only time of the year I normally see quite a few of my close friends. In all honesty, like. as silly as it sounds, like that the group like Zoe, Luke, Jose, Nathan, and have come like really good friends now. We're talking on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
And we only really meet up for conferences.
There are some wonderful people in this community, absolutely wonderful. It's the best thing I've ever done becoming part of it. I've met some incredible folks, lifelong friends.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a great note to finish the podcast on, because we are well over, and it's probably going to be our longest podcast we've done.
Hey,
so that's probably why.
I can cheer talk.
No, I think before we said sometimes we need Sophie to come in and talk, but it's been a bloody good episode. Really good to catch up with you, Peter. I said I don't think I've been a fantastic guest for the new season of the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. So thank you everyone for if you're watching on YouTube, and I know Peter's great for this. Is like, if you're not subscribed, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and yeah, we'll see you on the next episode.
Well, cheers, Peter. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye bye.
And I will end the recording there. Done. Thank you for listening to the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. Please make sure you hit that like, share and subscribe button to help us promote our message. You can also follow us on Twitter at MSFT Spotlight, and we're also on LinkedIn, the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. And finally, we'd like to tell you a little bit about Big Titan and thank them for sponsoring this podcast.
Remote migrations start here. Let MigrationWiz do the work for you. It's fast, secure, and 100% SaaS, which means you can migrate at any time and from anywhere. Migrate mailboxes, documents, public folders, personal archives, or even Microsoft Teams with just a few clicks. No special training needed and no customer downtime. When the work matters, choose MigrationWiz.